All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Liverpool Reaction and American LFC podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Coach Ralph. Coach, a tough game today against a team in form with some good players, and the scoreline was 2-0, but there were some nervy moments for Liverpool as well. But at the end of the day, 3 points, Mo Salah, another 2 goals, job done. Another 3 points. Pressure on Arsenal as they play Manchester City tomorrow. Let's go.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was a huge game because, as you say, Bournemouth are very much on form at the moment. And I did watch their game a couple of weeks back at Newcastle, and they were tremendous. And they followed that up, obviously, with a huge win over Nottingham Forest. So yeah, like they've beaten all the top teams at home this year. I mean, like some were calling it a banana skin, but I wouldn't classify this game as a banana skin because that's against teams that maybe aren't doing so well. Bournemouth, as we both agree, were on form and a huge result. And I think we'll know the full impact of the result once we see the Arsenal City score tomorrow.
Yeah. You know, as I was watching the game, a couple players stand out for that team. You know, obviously Antoine Semenyo is just a force. I mean, he's a big guy. He's strong. He was unfortunate not to score, to be fair, today. He hit the crossbar and then had one just whiz by the post where I don't think Allison would have got anywhere near it. But, you know, and then Kirkes, we've talked about in the past. He was very good as well. Clivert, who's been in form, missed a sitter off of a rebound. So that's kind of why I mentioned we were a little bit fortunate. However, Mo, with his classic curler, put the game away at 2-0.
Yeah, I thought that Liverpool played well, but so did Bournemouth. And I think it was one of those games where the key moments went in Liverpool's favour.
Yeah.
I mean, the offside goal in the first half, for example. I mean, if that happened against Liverpool, I would be livid. And we've talked about this before. These hairline offsides, which I feel really don't help the game. They helped Liverpool today, and actually, I believe Bournemouth had a similar incident when they played at Anfield when they scored, and it was a hairline offside. So anyway, that went in our favour. And the penalty, actually, I thought was interesting because it looked like Gakpo to me tripped over his own feet.
Yeah.
I suppose the only thing that kind of contradicts that is that Bournemouth didn't really, and Cook, who was involved, didn't really appeal the incident. So yeah, that one went in our favour. The Clivert chance actually is a little harder than you might think because the ball's bouncing high, and he does have an open goal, but I don't think it was quite as easy as you might think. And so, I mean, like he'll feel badly because he missed the opportunity. Bournemouth fans will feel the same. But yeah, overall, it was a game that went Liverpool's way in the key moments.
And well, the reason I think Clivert, you know, it was maybe sitter's not the right word, but he's been on fire. And, you know, that was probably one of the more easy chances that he'd have in the last 3-4 weeks where he's been bagging goals left and right. So unfortunate for him, but fortunate for us.
Right.
Coach, obviously this team, Bournemouth, is very good. And I mentioned, we've talked about Kirkes potentially being a target for Liverpool at left back. Is Semenyo somebody that if Salah leaves that we could bring in also? Do you think he's somebody that would fit the Liverpool profile? He's 25 years old, still has a good 4 or 5 years ahead of him. Is this somebody you think could play in the Liverpool side under Slot?
Well, it has been rumoured as well that Liverpool have looked at him. And I think the key thing to keep in mind here is Liverpool's sporting director, Richard Hughes,
Right.
he's the guy that recruited these players for Bournemouth. So he knows all about them and the kind of contracts and situations that they're in. So I think that those would definitely be players that could, I think they're players that do great at Liverpool, and so let's see if these rumours bear fruit, as it were, when summer rolls around.
Yeah, the transfer window is closed now, and no real fireworks, no big names really moving. Maybe Omar Marmoush going to Manchester City might be the only big thing, but I don't even know if that's that big. They paid a ton for him. He is a good player. But yeah, kind of a quiet window for the most part in the Premier League. Coach, as we kind of look ahead to Tottenham on Thursday, Tottenham's been struggling. They have a 1-0 lead going into the second leg. Now, this game will be at Anfield. As we saw in the Champions League on Wednesday, wholesale changes. Is this a game where Slot will bring in the big guns, or is this a game where we, make some changes to keep fresh for the Premier League and the Champions League?
Well, I think that what you've got to keep in mind, Salim, is Liverpool have 3 games in quick succession.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tottenham Thursday, then they go to Plymouth on Sunday, and only 2 days later, they played the make-up derby against Everton at Goodison.
Yeah.
And so, that is a difficult game, and Everton has an extra day's rest because they play their cup game on Saturday. So my gut feeling is that he will play a strong team against Tottenham and a similar-ish team to the one that played in Eindhoven down at Plymouth Argyle. So he has a fresher group for the Everton game because, as we say, it's a derby. It's the final game at Goodison Park. Everton is on a good run right now. There's maybe not quite so much pressure on them to win, but I think it's going to be blood and thunder and a tough game.
Yeah.
And it'll be a very difficult game to navigate. So I feel Sunday he will play a shadow squad down at Plymouth.
With Tottenham performing the way they have, and to be fair, they've had a host of injuries. So this isn't, a fully healthy Tottenham team, especially in the back. They're devastated. Coach, this is a great chance, right, for Liverpool to pip them, score a couple goals, turn the tide to Liverpool's favor, and then move on to the finals.
Yes.
Do you anticipate anything squirrely happening, or is this pretty straightforward? They're just not healthy, not playing well, and Liverpool should take this.
Well, you're right to identify their injury problems, although I believe that Van de Ven might be playing tomorrow, and I think he's a key player for them.
Yeah.
But I see the Tottenham game as a potential banana skin because, well, there's a few things going into the game. I thought the first leg down in London, that was Liverpool's weakest performance of the season. I thought they were poor, especially in the first half. They were very poor. And a lot of it, I felt, stemmed from Alisson, who was very slow to make decisions at the back, and Tottenham were pressing. And Alisson had a good game today, not just in terms of his saves, but in terms of how he distributed, because he was willing to play the ball longer because everybody knows that Bournemouth likes to press. So I think he's got to be prepared to do that. But overall, I would look at the Tottenham game as a potential banana skin because of all their injuries. I mean, they're missing so many good players. And so it isn't quite the same team as it could be. And people will expect Liverpool to win. So I think from a Tottenham point of view and from Ange Postecoglou, I mean, he has nothing to lose really in this game.
Right.
in terms of expectations and what have you. So I would anticipate. That if Liverpool play well and have a reasonable amount of luck, that it's a game that they should win. But I just have a gut feeling it's going to be a little more difficult than maybe most might anticipate.
Yeah, it could be. There's a lot of pressure on Postecoglou, but realistically, I mean, it's when a team gets devastated with injuries like that, you got to give the manager a pass. I mean, he's turned that team into an exciting team to watch. They're, kind of suspect in the back, but they're a very exciting team going forward. And I think overall, Tottenham fans have to be relatively pleased with the turnaround from a standpoint of an exciting team that goes forward. I think, Coach, that this one, you call it a banana skin. I think this one's going to be pretty straightforward for Liverpool. I see a 3-0, 3-1 type of victory, and then going on to the finals. However, it absolutely could go the other way as well. You're right. Tottenham doesn't have much to lose, and this could be maybe their chance to win, lift the trophy, even though they've had a really tough, difficult season. Now, moving on to Plymouth Argyle. Is there anything we need to know about this team? I don't know much about them. I don't know if you know anything about them. They're a championship team, I believe, right?
Yes, yeah, like the bottom of the championship. And the only thing that I know about them coming myself from Merseyside was Wayne Rooney was the manager up until recently.
Right.
So that didn't work out. They are bottom, but actually they won today. So I think that was the first win they've had in quite a while. And again, it's a team that has nothing to lose. And so that in itself can make the game difficult. And so ultimately it comes down to if Arne Slot does run his backups and academy kids and what have you, is how they adapt to the situation. Because again, I think it's going to be a physical game. Plymouth will go for it. I don't think they'll sit in. I think they'll try to take advantage of the situation, playing at home, FA Cup, and just trying to create an upset. So it'll bring its own problems. And I mean, as you saw when Liverpool went to the Netherlands and played PSV, Liverpool looked good in parts of the game, and then there were other parts of the game where maybe it was a little bit iffy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing game, one that Liverpool will be expected to win, even if they do field the backups.
Yeah, the PSV game was interesting, Coach. The central back pairing of Kwanzaa and Robertson were all over the place. PSV's goals were very well taken, especially that first one, the fake shot that sent Kwanzaa and Robertson to the ground. But overall, I think we're pleased. Barcelona and Atalanta did us a huge favor actually by tying, which leaves Liverpool at the top of the table and has an interesting potential matchup with either Brest plays PSG in the playoff there, Monaco plays Benfica, and we get one of the four.
Mm-hmm.
Not easy teams.
No.
So it's interesting that Barcelona and Liverpool finish 1 and 2, and they get two of these teams. I mean, but it is a Champions League, Coach, right? Everybody's really good. It's the top teams from all the leagues across Europe. Is there a chance for something going sideways here, or do you feel pretty good about these matchups?
Well, obviously, at some point, Liverpool are going to have to start playing against top teams again in European competition. I'm not quite sure how the seeding works, because you would think, in theory, PSG should win their tie,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other tie, I suppose, could go either way, because Liverpool finished first, do they take the lower seed in the next round?
I think so, but I'm not sure. You know, Coach, when we talked about it, you know, on our last podcast, we're just kind of waiting to see how this plays out to get a better understanding of it.
Right.
I don't know why they made it so complicated. However, I would think so. So, like, for example, if Brest were to upset PSG, you would think that Liverpool would would get Brest, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure.
Out of that group, PSG, are they the highest seed?
Check. From a table standpoint, right, Coach?
Yeah, I guess it'll go by the table.
Yeah, let me take a quick look here. I assume they are, but I don't know. Let's see. All right, PSG is 14th, Benfica 16th, Monaco 17th. Yeah, so it's 15 through 18. So PSG is the highest seed.
So I guess if they're following the seedings, then if PSG moves on as we expect, then they should play Barcelona.
Yeah.
And then we would play the winner of Monaco versus Benfica. So, you know, but having said that, I heard something about another draw. So, yeah, I think it's something that we have to live through this new format, so that we're clear on it for future years.
Coach, as far as this format is, do you like it? Do you know, is there some, did they overcomplicate it? What do you think? What are your feelings on this?
Well, obviously, I'm seeing a lot of debate about it online, and quite a number of people who aren't involved in it are saying that they don't like it. I suppose the negative of it is it's yet more games, but I think that kind of ties in with what the bigger clubs are wanting, because whether you like it or not, I think that this is another step on the road to, you know, like the European Super League or European League, call it what you will.
Right.
So I think the bigger teams want more games. The players may not, you know, but the clubs do, because it's money.
Right.
I think one thing that was interesting about it was maybe not so much for Liverpool, because they were either going to finish first or second, but there was a lot of jeopardy potentially, and I suppose the surprise that so many of the top teams, or the teams which are perceived to be at the top, PSG, who we've already mentioned, Real Madrid, Manchester City, they were going into it with the potential of not moving along, maybe. And I think City in particular, even though everybody expected them to beat Bruges, they were losing.
Yeah.
And so I think that was quite exciting. There was a little more jeopardy, as I say, than there typically is when it comes down to the old format. But I think that the reality is that it's, this kind of situation is here to stay. And I think that we need to let it run for 2 or 3 years just to get an overall feel for it.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought that might be a problem beforehand was, even though they have the 4 different pots, clearly some teams will have easier runs than others. So I've not heard any complaints about that yet, but I'd have thought that might be something that becomes an issue in future years. But as I think so many pointed out, all of the teams that you would expect to move on did move on. And if you look at the teams that didn't qualify, possibly only RB Leipzig was a team that didn't advance. And I mean, Leipzig aren't at the same level as some of the clubs that we've talked about already. So yeah.
Coach, when we kind of look at, across the leagues, and, I don't know if you are on Twitter /X, following Fabrizio Romano's page, where he's kind of the person that breaks news on transfers. Other than Kirkez and Semenyo, or 2 guys that we mentioned, that, are very bright spots for Bournemouth, and I think a lot of the big teams will be looking at them. Is there anybody else across Europe or across the Premier League that you look at and say, that would be a good fit at Liverpool?
Well, I know that the lad that scored the first goal for PSV, Bubakayo, I think that's how it's pronounced. I know
Yeah.
that Liverpool have been monitoring him.
Hmm.
And I've seen him play before, and he's very talented. And, he's a wide winger. He can score goals. He's skillful. And so he might well fit the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, but basically from the Premier League, the two lads from Bournemouth would be high on my list.
Hmm.
And other than that, I mean, like there are players around. Kudus at West Ham.
Yeah.
Bowen, although I have a feeling that most Liverpool fans wouldn't really fancy Bowen, but he's a player that I rate.
Yeah.
And so players like that, I think would fill the bill. But my guess is that besides left back, I mean, they've been trying for a few years to get in a holding or a defensive midfielder, and they've been rejected by a number of players. Now, as we've mentioned before, like they don't sign any old player.
Right.
But I'm sure that on their list that they will have identified some potential recruits for that position because I do think that they need another midfielder for sure. And a left back, as we've talked about, although I thought Robertson played very well today.
Yeah, he was good.
He was good. And then it comes down to the three key players who are on contracts that are expiring. What'll happen?
I know.
And again, I don't think that you can directly replace Salah and Van Dijk, because they're special players. The top players, Trent. I thought Trent's game was summed up in actually the first 10 seconds because he got the ball from the kickoff and he was tackled.
Right.
And so for me, he's been very hot and cold this year. You certainly see flashes of brilliance because of his vision and what have you. But for me, he's been very inconsistent and actually hasn't really been highlighted much by the media. I know they've concentrated a lot on the left side with Andy Robertson and Tsimikas. But for me, Trent Alexander-Arnold has been very up and down and very inconsistent. And so the expectation is that he will move.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a Connor Bradley who is a different style of player, but he's a good player.
Yeah.
So will they look to recruit another right back? Maybe. But I think fullbacks and I think defensive midfield really would have to be the priority. And the only thing that kind of throws a different light on the situation is Arne Slot will have been there for a year. And so who does he want? What are his requirements? Will he look to move certain players along? So I'm sure most people thinking in that vein of thought would probably think of a Darwin Núñez, for example. Luis Diaz. He's been rumoured now for over a year, that Barcelona are interested in him.
Yeah.
And he would be interested in Barcelona. So there's all these little things that we don't know about, as well as resolving the contracts of those three key players.
When you look at this, and when I look at this, let's assume the worst. Van Dijk, Salah, Trent are gone. And then we move Diaz on, we move Darwin on. Now, those are 5 key players. I mean, revamping the team, bringing in the right people, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of, that's going to be a lot on Coach Slot to bring in the players and integrate them when you have 4 of the 5 are starters and Darwin is, Captain Chaos comes in as a substitute and works very hard, and all that stuff we've talked about Darwin, and he pops up here and there with goals, big goals, and in key moments. Coach, how do we integrate four new starters to a team like this?
Well, I'd be very surprised if both Arne Slot and the club want to make that number of changes.
Yeah.
Because that's significant. That is really significant. And even if you bring in really good players, I mean, it still takes time for them not just to adapt to Liverpool FC, but if they're coming from abroad, there's the living situation, there's potential language situation, there's a whole range of things that you have to consider. So I think there's a lot of things that we aren't party to right now, and obviously the media isn't. Do Richard Hughes and company know what the story is definitively with Salah, Van Dijk, and Trent? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And just say hypothetically, if one or two of them have signed contracts, like they're clearly not announcing it for whatever reason, and my guess is it's probably got something to do with trying to handle the three of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a lot up in the air. I mean, worst case scenario that all three move, then they possibly might have to make more than two or three changes, which is the ideal. So that would be difficult for the manager. I mean, but just say if two are staying, then again that kind of impacts from the point of view that they need less reinforcements.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I see a lot of the chat online, and it's there's a lot of people getting very, very concerned about it, and I think that's a whole separate discussion maybe at this point, but it does have the potential to affect the squad for sure. Although it hasn't really impacted the results so far, I'm pleased to say. So, so long may that continue.
Coach, you mentioned Rooney being let go by Plymouth Argyle recently. Steven Gerrard and his relationship. I don't remember the name of the club in Saudi, but they've mutually parted ways, and there's rumors of him potentially taking over for Haitenga as an assistant coach to Slot if Haitenga moves along. What is it about these players that want to be coaches and yet they can't find the success? Would it make sense for Stevie G to come to Liverpool and just kind of learn under Slot and maybe bide his time till his next coaching job? He obviously wants to be part of football after his playing days, but he's been let go several times. Rooney, same thing. Lampard, the same thing. Well, first of all, my first question is why are these players struggling to find their feet coaching? And second of all, would it make sense for Stevie G to come to Liverpool and just kind of learn under Slot, maybe kind of stay there for 3, 4, 5 years with Slot?
Yeah, interesting situation because like you mentioned Rooney and you've mentioned Lampard, they've had very limited success. Steven Gerrard actually had success when he went to Scotland with Glasgow Rangers.
Yeah.
And yes, it is a league that is dominated by two teams, but actually it's been dominated by one, which is Celtic.
Yeah.
So in his time there, he was able one season to take the league championship off Celtic. And so I think that's an accomplishment. But I think all these guys, they were big name players in their time. And so there's always going to be a pressure and an expectation that goes along with that, because people tend to believe, okay, you're a big name player, you're going to be a manager, a good manager, or not a good manager. So there's a lot of pressure on them, I believe. moving to Liverpool, I mean, in theory, I suppose it depends whether or not Arne Slot would be willing to take him on. I think that's the first big question.
Yeah.
I think the other question as well is that Steven Gerrard might still feel that he's got to make his way successfully as his own man. So again, we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think for Steven Gerrard, the question is, does he still want to be a manager or does he not? So, so I think that we've got to wait and see what he does next.
Yeah. Coach, as I look at this team, and we look we're in 4 competitions. The commentary today when we made our substitutions was how the Bournemouth coach Areola must be looking over and be envious of the options that Slot has to bring in to change a game. And, the depth of the squad is just as important as the quality of the squad right now. Mm-hmm. So as we look forward, and we're in a very good place in the Premier League. The knockout stages will start shortly, and anything can happen in those in the Champions League. We have a very good situation in the Carabao Cup from a standpoint of we're playing kind of a wounded animal in Tottenham, and then we play a team that's at the bottom of the Championship in the FA Cup to advance. When you kind of look at these competitions, there hasn't been as much talk of the quadruple as there was last year in Klopp's last year. There was a lot of talk about it, especially once they won the Carabao Cup, which was our first podcast. When you look at this and not as much noise being talked about the quadruple, will that intensify? And how do you see the team performing in all these competitions?
Yeah. If Liverpool beats Tottenham on Thursday and moves to the final, I think that you'll start to get more chatter about it. Whether it'll be as intense as it was last year, I think because everybody knew that Jurgen Klopp was leaving the club,
right?
That it kind of got pushed to the forefront a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And if you look, I believe last week was the 1-year anniversary of when that happened, and if you look at Liverpool, February up until about the middle of March, they were going through a run where they had so many injuries, and he's bringing in academy kids, and yet Liverpool are still winning, and they're still chasing it. And so I think there was a lot of, kind of like a romantic notion about Klopp's final season,
For sure.
Quadruple, even though the odds are against him.
Yeah.
So I think that intensified. People will talk about it more if they reach the Carabao Cup final, and if they win the Carabao Cup, again it'll go up a level. But I mean, look, they can beat Tottenham on Thursday and then get knocked out. They can get shocked by Plymouth. So, sure. I mean, Plymouth, like they go to Plymouth, and I think that what people forget is Plymouth, Plymouth park the bus or they make it difficult. It goes into extra time. There's no result. And then it becomes a penalty shootout. And so once it's a penalty shootout, I mean, it really is a lottery.
Yeah.
Liverpool do have better players and more experience at a higher level, even if he's got the backups playing. But maybe not, maybe it comes down to an academy kid, trying to win the game from a penalty spot, and that's a lot of pressure, and I think overall that we're a long way from really seriously talking about the quadruple, but I think people inevitably will be, especially if they win the next 2 games.
How does Slot manage these types of expectations that are put on from the public, the media, the fans? And how do you keep the team focused on, it seems like they have a very good approach, one game at a time, You know, that's constantly kind of been uh, the the verbiage that all the players have been using. We just look at the next game, which is a very good way to think about, you know, your season, not getting ahead of yourself. So, you know, when you talk about a banana peel or however you say it, you know, this kind of mentality of one game at a time is a great mentality to have when you have games every 2 3 days. Is there other than, you know, a potential slip up? I don't see it happening. It could happen, however. I mean, it's football. Stuff happens all the time. But as we kind of move forward, if we were to lose to, you know, in the Caribou Cup or the FA Cup, it's still okay, right? I mean, the Premier League and Champions League are the priorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that'll make the quadruple hard, and it's never happened, is just the number of games that you have to play.
Yeah.
And again, I think the only team that in theory's had the squad to do it's been Manchester City, but I think actually that Liverpool have been closer to accomplishing it than Manchester City.
Mm-hmm.
So it's navigating the number of games, and then you're right about the mentality of taking it one game at a time. But I think it's a little bit easier for Liverpool because they've been in this situation before, so they have experience.
Yeah.
And the core of the team has been in that situation before, obviously. And then if you look at players who are kind of new to the club or relatively new, like the McAllister, I mean, like he's a World Cup winner. So, you know,
Yeah.
so pretty used to pressure and high intensity games. You know, like Szoboszlai is the captain of his country.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of players here who have considerable experience, not just in chasing multiple cups and trophies and what have you, but just in the game in general and at the highest level.
Well, top of the Premier League, a lot of pressure on Arsenal. What kind of result do you want to see tomorrow? Do you want to see a tie? Do you want to see an Arsenal loss? What's ideal for Liverpool tomorrow?
I think some will think that if Manchester City win, but personally, I think a draw. I think a draw would suit Liverpool the best. And as I said at the start of the pod, I think we'll know the full impact of the Liverpool win today once we see the result of that particular game. So yeah.
Well, everybody, we are happy Liverpool fans, that's for sure. This game was a tester for sure against Bournemouth. My hat's off to them. I think that team is playing very well. They have good players. Areola has done a fantastic job with that team. They're a handful for everybody, including Liverpool. But as we kind of look forward, we're very excited at what we have in front of us. There are some tough games coming. The last Merseyside derby against Everton at Goodison Park. Coach, have you seen the new stadium on the water there?
Well, when I was in Liverpool, obviously drove by it. So
beautiful.
Yeah, it looks like a lovely stadium and what have you. So yeah, I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of banter once Everton move into there as to who has the best stadium, and so the Blues will be talking about, oh, it's state of the art, it's modern, and I'm sure the Liverpool fans will be countering with, oh, yeah, you know, but we have the historic ground. And actually, if you look at Anfield and everything, the way it's been renovated, I mean, like, it's nothing like the ground it was back in the 80s when I left England to come to America. It's nothing like it at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, there'll be banter over the stadiums, but I think it's great for the city actually that you know that Everton have built a new stadium and I mean I would rather see two Merseyside clubs doing well because I think in the Premier League era Manchester's kind of nosed ahead of us and I would like to see that redressed from that perspective.
All right. Well, Coach, as always, thank you so much for your insight. Always fun talking about Liverpool with you. And everybody, please subscribe. We are building a community. We want you there. I personally apologize for not being able to do a podcast in the last week or so. I had a minor procedure, deviated septum, but I literally sounded like I was underwater until Monday. So thank you for your patience with this. And Coach and I will be back probably Thursday, Coach, if we can get one in after the game. So thanks everybody for watching, and those listening via podcast. We really appreciate it, and we will be back on Thursday to discuss the Tottenham game. And guys, we have a lot to be happy about. We have a very good team, a coach that has settled in very well, and we're in 4 competitions. So let's keep it up. And Liverpool fans, I'm sure you guys are just as excited as Coach and I are. Coach, a little bit more, Coach, a little bit more reserved about how Liverpool's doing. But
happy though, happy. No, it's been an excellent season. Excellent season today. So.
All right, everybody. Thank you again. Take care, and we will catch you guys on Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye now.